My name is Sophia Winters, and I've spent the last 3 years trying to forget the sound of a flat line. That terrible, unending beep that means a heart has stopped beating, that someone you love is gone. It's strange, the things that haunt you after loss. Not always the big moments, but the small ones. The coffee mug still sitting in the dishwasher, the half-read book on the nightstand, the text message that will never be answered. For me, it was the sound, that flat line, and the fractured heartbeats that came before it. I was 26 when my fiancé, Ethan, collapsed during our morning run. 1 minute he was beside me, laughing about something ridiculous, and the next he was on the ground, clutching his chest, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, the doctor said later, a heart condition he'd had since birth, but never knew about. His heart had been a ticking time bomb, and neither of us had heard it counting down. 3 years later, I'm still trying to put the pieces back together, still trying to make sense of a world that could take someone so vibrant, so full of life, in an instant, still trying to remember how to live when half of me died on that jogging path. That's what grief is. Learning to live as half a person, learning to breathe with fractured lungs, to see through tear-blurred eyes, to walk with legs that want to collapse beneath you. It's also learning that life goes on, whether you want it to or not. The sun still rises, bills still need to be paid, friends still get married and have babies and buy houses, and somehow you're expected to participate in it all, as if your heart isn't lying shattered in your chest. I've gotten good at pretending, at smiling when appropriate, at making the right noises during conversations, at showing up for birthdays and weddings and baby showers. I've mastered the art of existing without really living, until today. Today, something happened that cracked through the careful numbness I've cultivated, something that made me feel again, whether I wanted to or not. It started with a letter, not an email or a text or any of the ways people normally communicate these days. An actual letter, handwritten, delivered to my apartment by a courier who needed my signature to release it. The envelope was cream-colored and heavy, the kind used for wedding invitations or formal announcements. My name and address were written in unfamiliar handwriting, the letters flowing and elegant. There was no return address. I opened it standing in my kitchen, the afternoon sunlight streaming through the window, dust motes dancing in the golden beams. Inside was a single sheet of the same cream-colored paper, covered in that same elegant script. Dear Miss Winters, it began. My name is Claire Bennett. You don't know me, but 3 years ago, you saved my life, or more accurately, your fiancé did. I had to sit down, my legs suddenly unable to support me. The letter trembled in my hands as I continued reading. 3 years ago, I was dying of heart failure. I had been on the transplant list for 18 months, and time was running out. And then, on April 17th, I received a heart, your fiancé's heart. April 17th, the date was burned into my memory. The day Ethan died, the day everything changed. I've wanted to contact you for 3 years, the letter continued, to thank you for the decision you made in what must have been the worst moment of your life, to tell you that your loss gave me a future. But the transplant center advised waiting, giving you time to grieve before making contact. They said 3 years was standard protocol. Standard protocol. As if anything about this situation could be standard. As if there's a normal way to hear from the person who's living because the love of your life isn't. I understand if you don't want any contact with me, Claire wrote. Many donor families don't. But if you do, I would be honored to meet you, to thank you in person, to show you what your gift has allowed me to do with my life. She included her phone number and email address, then signed off simply, with eternal gratitude, Claire Bennett. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, the letter in my hands, tears sliding silently down my cheek. I remembered the moment she was talking about, the terrible moment in the hospital when the doctors had asked about organ donation. I had been numb with shock, barely able to comprehend that Ethan was gone, let alone make decisions about his body. But I had said yes, because Ethan had told me once, during some random conversation years before, that he wanted to be a donor. If I'm gone, he'd said, I won't need these parts anymore. Might as well let someone else use them. That was Ethan, practical, generous, always thinking of others. And now his heart was beating in someone else's chest, someone named Claire Bennett. I don't know how long I sat there, tears falling, memories washing over me. The sun had shifted, the kitchen now in shadow. When I finally reached for my phone, I didn't call the number in the letter. I wasn't ready for that. Instead, I called my sister, Lily, the only person who had truly been there for me through everything. Hey, Soph, she answered, her voice warm and familiar. What's up? I got a letter, I said, my voice cracking, from the person who has Ethan's heart. Silence on the other end. Then, oh, Sophia, are you okay? I don't know, I admitted. I don't even know what I feel. Do you want me to come over? Lily asked. Please, I whispered. 30 minutes later, we were sitting on my couch, the letter between us on the coffee table. Lily had read it twice, her expression thoughtful. What are you thinking? She asked finally. Do you want to meet her? I stared at the letter, at the elegant handwriting that somehow needed to convey the enormity of what connected us. I don't know, I said honestly. Part of me is curious, part of me is terrified, and part of me is angry. Angry. Lily tilted her head. Why angry? I struggled to articulate the feeling. Because she's alive and he's not, I finally said. Because she gets to live her life, have experiences, make memories, and it's all because Ethan died. It's not rational. I know. It's not her fault. But still, Lily nodded, understanding in her eyes. Grief isn't rational, she said gently, and you're allowed to feel whatever you feel. But maybe meeting her could help. Maybe seeing that something good came from what happened, maybe that could be healing. I wasn't sure if anything could heal the wound Ethan's death had left. It had scabbed over, perhaps, but never truly healed. The slightest touch could make it bleed again. But as the days passed, I found myself thinking about Claire Bennett, about the heart that beat in her chest. Ethan's heart, the heart that had loved me, that had raced when we kissed, that had beat steadily against my ear as we lay together at night. What would it be like to hear it again? A week after receiving the letter, I finally worked up the courage to respond, not by phone, which felt too immediate, too real, but by email, where I could carefully choose my words, take my time, maintain some distance. Dear Claire, I wrote, thank you for your letter. I'll admit it was unexpected and stirred up many emotions. I'm not sure if I'm ready to meet in person, but I would like to know more about you, about your life since the transplant. If you're willing to share. I signed it simply, Sophia, and hit send before I could change my mind. Her response came the next day, a long email full of details about her life. She was 32, she wrote, a music teacher at an elementary school in Boston. She had been diagnosed with viral cardiomyopathy in her mid-20s, a condition that had gradually destroyed her heart function until she needed a transplant. Before I got sick, she wrote, I took everything for granted, my health, my career, the simple joy of walking up a flight of stairs without feeling like I was dying. The transplant changed everything, not just physically, but how I see the world. Every day feels like a gift now, every heartbeat a miracle. She told me about her family, parents who had been her caregivers during her illness, a younger brother who had moved across the country to be near her during her recovery. She told me about her students, how teaching music to children filled her with joy, and she told me about the things she'd done since the transplant, hiking in the White Mountains, learning to sail, volunteering with an engine that supported transplant recipients. I know this is all because of your fiancé, she wrote, because of you. I think about that every day. I try to live in a way that honors the gift I've been given. I hope that brings you some comfort. Did it bring me comfort? I wasn't sure. But it did bring something else, curiosity, a desire to know more, to understand this woman who carried a piece of Ethan with her. We exchanged emails for several weeks. I told her about Ethan, how we met in college, how he proposed on a camping trip when our tent collapsed in the rain, and he decided it was the perfect moment anyway. How he loved spicy food and science fiction movies and would sing off-key in the shower every morning. Sometimes, I wrote, I wonder if parts of him are still there, in his heart, if some essence of who he was transferred to you. It's not scientific, I know, but I can't help wondering. I've wondered the same thing, Claire replied. There's actually research about cellular memory in transplant recipients, people who develop new tastes or interests after receiving an organ. I've never liked spicy food, but music, I've always loved music, so I can't attribute that to Ethan. But sometimes, when I'm playing piano for my students, I feel this connection, like the music is coming from somewhere deeper than just me. I don't know if that's Ethan, or just the profound awareness that I'm alive because of him. Either way, it feels sacred. Sacred. The word resonated with me. There was something sacred about this connection, this invisible thread that linked me to a stranger through the heart of the man I had loved. After a month of emails, Claire asked again if I would consider meeting in person. I completely understand if you're not ready, she wrote, but I'll be in New York next month for a conference. If you'd like to meet, even just for coffee, I would be honored. I stared at the email for a long time, my finger hovering over the reply button. Was I ready for this? To sit across from the woman who lived because Ethan died? To possibly hear his heart beating in her chest? I called Lily again. I think you should do it, she said after I explained the situation. Not because you have to, but because I think you want to. I can hear it in your voice, Soph. You're curious, and maybe this is part of your healing journey. Healing journey. The phrase sounded like something from a self-help book. But maybe Lily was right. Maybe this was a step I needed to take. Okay, I replied to Claire. Let's meet. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe near Central Park, neutral territory, public enough to feel safe but private enough for the conversation we needed to have. As the day approached, I grew increasingly anxious. What would I say to her? What would she expect from me? Would I break down crying the moment I saw her? The morning of our meeting, I stood in front of my closet, paralyzed by the absurd question of what to wear to meet the woman who had your dead fiancé's heart. Nothing in the etiquette books covered this situation. I finally settled on a simple blue dress, Ethan's favorite color. It felt like a small tribute, a way to bring him with me. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, choosing a table in the corner where we could talk privately. My hands shook as I ordered a cup of tea, the porcelain cup rattling against the saucer when the waitress set it down. And then she was there. I recognized Claire immediately from the photo she had sent, petite, with shoulder-length brown hair and warm eyes. She wore a simple white blouse and jeans, a colorful scarf around her neck. She looked healthy, vibrant, alive. Our eyes met across the cafe, and something passed between us, recognition, acknowledgement of the invisible bond that connected us. She approached slowly, as if giving me time to change my mind. "Sophia?" she said softly. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "I'm Claire," she said, though we both knew that introduction was unnecessary. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me. Thank you for coming," I managed to say. She sat across from me, her movements careful, deliberate, as if she was afraid of startling me. Up close, I could see the faint line of a scar, peeking out from the neckline of her blouse, the mark of her surgery, of the moment Ethan's heart had been placed inside her chest. "This is strange, isn't it?" she said, with a small smile. "I've thought about this meeting for so long, and now I'm not sure what to say. It's definitely not a normal situation." I agreed, grateful for her acknowledgement of the strangeness. "We ordered coffee decaf for her," she explained, "because caffeine could affect her heart rate, Ethan's heart rate." The thought made me dizzy. Can I ask you something personal?" I said after our drinks arrived. "Of course," Claire nodded. "Anything. What does it feel like, having someone else's heart?" She considered the question carefully. "Physically, it feels normal, I suppose. The human body is remarkable at adapting, but emotionally," she placed her hand over her chest, over Ethan's heart. "It's humbling, overwhelming. I'm constantly aware that I'm alive because someone else isn't, that this heart in my chest belonged to someone who was loved, who had plans and dreams and a future, someone who was real." Tears filled my eyes. Real. Yes, Ethan had been so very real. Sometimes, after 3 years, it was hard to remember the solidity of him, the tangible presence. He was becoming a collection of memories, of photographs, of stories I told myself to keep him alive in my mind. "Can you tell me about him?" Claire asked gently. "About Ethan? I know some things from your emails, but I'd like to know more about the person whose heart I carry." And so I told her about Ethan's laugh that could fill a room, about his passion for teaching. He had been a high school science teacher, determined to make physics and chemistry accessible and exciting for his students. About his terrible dancing, but his insistence on doing it anyway. About his kindness, his patience, his ability to see the best in everyone. As I spoke, something shifted in me. For the first time in 3 years, I was talking about Ethan not with grief as the dominant emotion, but with joy, with pride, with love. Claire listened intently, occasionally asking questions, sometimes laughing at the funny stories, her eyes shining with tears at the poignant ones. It felt like sharing Ethan with someone who truly wanted to know him, not just out of politeness or obligation, but out of a genuine desire to understand the person whose heart kept her alive. "He sounds amazing," she said when I finally fell silent, "like someone who made the world better just by being in it." "He did," I agreed, wiping away tears, "and in a way, he still is." Through Claire's eyes widened slightly, as if surprised by my words. "I hope so," she said softly. "I try to live that way, to honor him, to honor you." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. "I brought something for you," she said, pushing it across the table. "You don't have to accept it if it feels too strange, but I wanted you to have it." I opened the box to find a small device, similar to a stethoscope but more compact, a digital heartbeat recorder. "It's recorded my heartbeat," Claire explained. "Ethan's heartbeat. I thought you might want to hear it again, or not. It's completely up to you." I stared at the device, my emotions too complex to name. Fear, longing, grief, curiosity, gratitude, all swirling together in a storm I couldn't navigate. "And thank you," I managed to say, closing the box without turning on the device. "I'm not sure if I'm ready to listen right now, but I think someday I will be." Claire nodded, understanding in her eyes. "There's no rush," she said. "No expectations. It's yours if and when you want it." We talked for nearly 3 hours, sharing stories, asking questions, gradually becoming more comfortable with this strange intimacy between us. Claire told me more about her life since the transplant, about the anti-rejection medications she would take forever, about the regular biopsies to check for signs of rejection, about her determination to make the most of her second chance. "I volunteer with an organization that promotes organ donation," she said. "I speak at events sometimes, sharing my story. Would it be okay if I mentioned Ethan? Not by Bine if you prefer, but just the kind of person he was. I think it helps people understand the impact of their decision to be donors." "I'd like that," I said, surprising myself with the certainty of my answer. Ethan would like that too. He was always about helping others. This would be another way for him to keep doing that. As our meeting drew to a close, I found myself reluctant to say goodbye. This woman, this stranger who wasn't really a stranger anymore, had given me something I hadn't realized I needed: a new way to connect with Ethan, a new dimension to my grief, a glimpse of something good that had come from something terrible. "Would it be okay if we stayed in touch?" Claire asked as we stood to leave. "Maybe meet again sometime." "I'd like that," I said, and meant it. We hugged goodbye, an embrace that felt both strange and natural. As my arms went around her, I could feel her heartbeat against my chest. Ethan's heartbeat, strong, steady, alive. That night, alone in my apartment, I took out the heartbeat recorder. I held it in my hands for a long time, turning it over, considering, was I ready to hear it, to hear Ethan's heart beating in someone else's body? Finally, I pressed the button. The sound filled my quiet living room, a steady, rhythmic beating. Thump, 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 the thump, thump. It wasn't the same as pressing my ear to Ethan's chest. The cadence was slightly different, the rhythm unique to Claire's body now, but it was his heart, the heart that had loved me, the heart that was still beating, still giving life, still existing in the world even though he was gone. I curled up on the couch, the recorder clutched to my chest, and cried, not the desperate, hopeless tears of fresh grief, but something different, something that felt like release, like accepting, like the first fragile shoots of healing. In the days that followed, I found myself listening to the heartbeat recording often, while making dinner, before falling asleep, during my morning coffee. It became a ritual, a connection to both the past and the present, to what I had lost and what remained. Claire and I continue to email, sharing updates about our lives. She sent me photos of her students' spring concert, of a hiking trip she took in the mountains, of the garden she was planting in her backyard. I sent her pictures of the science museum exhibit I visited, because it reminded me of Ethan, of the cake I baked for his birthday, even though he wasn't there to eat it, of the memorial bench his school had dedicated in his name. 2 months after our meeting, she invited me to Boston for a weekend. No pressure, she wrote, but I'd love to show you my city, introduce you to my family. They've wanted to meet you for a long time. I hesitated, unsure if I was ready for that level of connection. But then I thought about what Ethan would say. He had always pushed me to be brave, to step outside my comfort zone, to embrace new experiences. I'd love to come, I replied. The visit to Boston was a turning point. Claire's parents embraced me like family, tears in their eyes as they thanked me for the gift that had saved their daughter. Her brother showed me around the city, pointing out Claire's favorite places, telling me stories of her recovery, and Claire herself opened her home and her life to me, inviting me to a school concert where her students performed, introducing me to her friends, sharing her work. On my last night there, we sat on her balcony, watching the sunset over the Boston skyline. A comfortable silence stretched between us, the kind that only comes with genuine connection. Thank you for coming, Claire said finally. I know this isn't easy. It's been easier than I expected, I admitted, and harder too, in some ways. But mostly, it feels right. Like this is what Ethan would want. Claire nodded, her hand unconsciously moving to rest over her heart, over Ethan's heart. I believe that too, she said softly. Sometimes I feel like he's with us, connecting us. Is that too strange to say? No, I said, surprised by how much I meant it. It's not strange at all, because the truth was, I had felt it too. Throughout the weekend, in unexpected moments, I had sensed Ethan's presence, not as a ghost or a supernatural visitation, but as a thread connecting me to Claire, to her family, to this new chapter of my life that I never could have anticipated. When I returned to New York, something had shifted inside me. The grief was still there. It would always be there. I knew, but it no longer defined me. It was no longer the lens through which I viewed everything. For the first time since Ethan's death, I found myself making plans for the future. I enrolled in a graduate program I had been considering before the accident, but had abandoned in the aftermath. I started volunteering at a grief support group for young adults who had lost partners. I even went on a date, a coffee meetup with a colleague's brother that didn't lead anywhere but felt like a step toward something. Claire and I continued our friendship, visiting each other every few months, talking regularly by phone and email. She became a bridge between my past and my future, a living reminder that life continues, that beauty can emerge from tragedy, that love never truly disappears. A year after our first meeting, Claire invited me to join her at an organ donation awareness event in New York. She was speaking about her experience as a transplant recipient, and she wanted me there to represent the donor family perspective. You don't have to speak if you don't want to, she assured me. Just your presence would mean a lot. I agreed to attend, though I wasn't sure if I would have the courage to speak publicly about Ethan, about our loss, about the decision to donate his organs. The event was held in a hotel ballroom, filled with transplant recipients, donor families, medical professionals, and advocates. Claire spoke eloquently about her journey from diagnosis to transplant to recovery, about the gift she had received and her commitment to honoring it. And then, to my surprise, she invited me to the stage. This is Sophia Winters, she said, her voice warm with affection. The woman who made the decision that saved my life. The woman whose fiancé's heart beats in my chest. The woman who has become one of my dearest friends. I walked to the podium on shaky legs, my prepared remarks forgotten, looking out at the sea of faces, some with the healthy glow of recipients, others with the shadowed eyes of those who had lost loved ones. I found myself speaking from the heart. My name is Sophia, I began, and 3 years ago, I lost the love of my life. Ethan was 30 years old, a science teacher, a marathon runner, a man who loved life and lived it full. He collapsed during a morning run, and just like that, everything changed. I told them about the decision to donate his organs, about the years of grief that followed, about the letter that arrived one day and changed everything again. Meeting Claire was terrifying, I admitted. How do you face the person who lives because someone you loved died? What do you say? What do you feel? But what I discovered was something I never expected, a new connection to Ethan, a way for his love, his generosity, his spirit to continue in the world. I looked at Claire, sitting in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Grief changes you, I continued. It fractures your heart into pieces that never quite fit back together the same way. But what I've learned is that those fractured pieces can still beat, still love, still find joy, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, those fractures let in new light, new connections, new possibilities that you never could have imagined. I spoke about the importance of organ donation, about how it had created a bridge between loss and hope, about how it had given meaning to a tragedy that otherwise seemed senseless. Ethan's heart still beats, I said in closing, not in his chest, but in Claire's, and in a way, in mine too, different now, changed, fractured but still beating, still loving, still. The applause was thunderous, but I barely heard it through my tears. Claire met me at the edge of the stage, enfolding me in an embrace that felt like coming home, 2 hearts beating together, hers steady and strong, mine broken but healing, connected by the man we had both loved in different ways. In the years since that day, Claire and I have continued our unlikely friendship. We've spoken together at dozens of events, sharing our story, encouraging organ donation, offering hope to those navigating loss and illness. I've moved forward in my life in ways I once thought impossible. I completed my graduate degree. I published a book about grief and healing. I even fell in love again slowly, cautiously, with a kind man who understands that Ethan will always be part of my heart. Claire was there at my wedding, standing beside me as a bridesmaid. As we hugged before the ceremony, I felt the steady rhythm of Ethan's heart against my chest. Not a goodbye, but a blessing, a continuation. People often ask me if I believe in fate, in destiny, in things happening for a reason. I don't know about that. I don't know if there was some grand plan that included Ethan dying young so that Claire could live. That seems too cruel, too calculated. What I do believe in is connection, in the ways we touch each other's lives, sometimes briefly, sometimes profoundly, in the ripples that spread outward from every action, every decision, every love. Ethan's heart beats on in Claire. His kidneys gave someone else a life free from dialysis. His corneas allowed 2 people to see again. His tissue helped heal burns and injuries. From one life, many lives touched. From one ending, many new beginnings. And my heart, my fractured, imperfect heart, it beats on too, changed by grief, expanded by love, connected to others in ways I never could have imagined, not despite the fractures, but but because of them. Because sometimes it's the broken places that let the light in, that allow us to connect, that teach us how strong we truly are. And in those fractured heartbeats, I have found not just survival, but a new kind of wholeness, a new way of being in the world, a new understanding of what it means to love, to lose, and to live on. If Sophia's journey of love, loss, and unexpected connection touched your heart, please share this story with someone who might be struggling with their own fractured heartbeats. Your support, through likes and subscriptions, helps our channel continue creating these emotional narratives that remind us all that even our broken places can let in new light. Join our storytelling family as we explore the beautiful, messy, and ultimately hopeful journey of being human.